Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
Where we continue to follow the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden now.
Those are just some of the scenes overnight as thousands of Americans gathered in celebration of Osama bin Laden's death.
Former Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill says he has thought about the mission every day since that May Day in 2011.
From multiple conversations you had with Rob O'Neill over the past year and a half, how'd you get
access? And you described that his head kind of exploded when you hit him.
I actually hit him 3 times because I shot him twice when he was standing and once on the ground.
That is the fucking American badass right there.
We are not going for fame and we are not going for bravado. We are going for the single mom who dropped her kids off at elementary school on a Tuesday morning, and then 45 minutes later she jumped to her death out of a skyscraper.
If you need help, hang up and then dial your operator.
I'm Rob O'Neill, and this is the Operator Podcast.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for your patience with me. As you could probably tell by my voice, I've been traveling a little bit. That's okay. It's all good here. But we are back with the Operator Podcast, episode 133, which is pretty exciting. We're finally back into the interviews, which is nice, so you won't need to listen to me run my mouth and tell you all the correct opinions. Now you can have 2 people tell you the correct opinions. It'll be fun today. We got my friend of, not quite 30 years, but a long, long time ago. I first met Steve Drum at SEAL Team 2 in 1997, early 97. He got there before me. Allegedly, he had the last Hard Buds class. We'll talk about that. It'll be fun. We worked together for quite a while at SEAL Team 2, and he ended up being a Master Chief. So Master Chief Steve Drum is funny. I still think of him as the HT3, the Hull Tech 3rd class when I met him at SEAL Team 2. He made E5 real quick, so no big deal. So it took some of us a little bit longer than that, but it's going to be fun today. We're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff, some adventures that we went on. The story you want to wait for that we're going to get into, I'm sure, is the Millennium Party that we had in Manama, Bahrain with Bravo Platoon, SEAL Team 2. That was a good group of dudes, a lot of fun too. I'm going to try to remember this, but if I don't tell the story or ask about the story of, I'm not going to tell you what happened right now because he tells a better story than I do, believe it or not. But it involves a moving truck in the Middle East, 2 of us in it, a huge, huge mud puddle in the middle of nowhere, and for some reason, some Arab in his dress white standing right next to it. I'm not going to say what happened, but I think you can imagine what happened. So we're going to have a good interview today. It's episode 133. We'll see how far we get into it. If I know Master Chief Drum and myself, we will probably go long, so I might break it up into a few parts, maybe 2 parts. We'll see. But it's going to be a good time. So we're going to get into it in a second. Before we do, I got to tell you about the sponsor of the show, because I've been talking about Ridge Wallet for a while, and I've been carrying Ridge Wallet on my trips that I've recently taken, and I'm taking coming up soon. Yeah, I used to have the old designer wallets that are big and thick and frumpy. They looked fancy and they were cool, but just too big for I like them to be more slick, like something slick, like when you're climbing a ladder, nothing on your front. You can get up that ladder. Look at this thing right here. This is my Ridge Wallet. I carry it everywhere. And if you know how I roll, obviously I have cash for tipping. You got to tip in cash because Uncle Sugar doesn't see it. But look how thin that is. Holds up to 12 cards, your ID included. Look at those bad boys. All right there. Teeny little wallet. It's awesome. It's cool. If losing your wallet's the worst. I hate that. It's like losing anything else, but Ridge Wallet can come with an AirTag attachment. You'll know exactly where your wallet is anytime. So before panic kicks in, like we all know it can, you'll know where it is. And it's not just about wallets. Ridge creates premium essentials like car keys, car key cases, suitcases, rings, built with the same slick, durable design. And no matter what you pick from Ridge, they have free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty on all of their products. And I'm telling you, I've been carrying this bad boy. Here it is empty. Look at that. And it's not much thicker when you put up to 12 cards in it. So for a limited time, though, so you should do this, The listeners of the Operator Podcast get 10% off at Ridge when you use code THEOPERATOR. Use that at checkout, The Operator. So just go over, do this. Go to ridge.com and see what they have. Use code THEOPERATOR, and you're all set. After you purchase, though, make sure they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Tell them you heard from The Operator. Tell them that we sent you there, that I sent you there, that Master Chief Drum and I sent you there. Go to ridge.com, use code The Operator, check out all their cool stuff. So without further ado, here is Master Chief Steven Drum talking to me.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Operator Podcast. One of the episodes in 130 somewhere, probably 133, something like that. But we're back in a familiar setting, studio face-to-face, in-person interview. I got my friend, my teammate, the guy that I've known longer than most of my family, Steve Drum, Master Chief Drum. Welcome to it.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah,
I'm glad we were able to make this happen face-to-face.
Oh, it's awesome. About time, too. I'm going to blame myself for being lazy. But it's fun. Steve and I worked together at SEAL Team 2 for quite a while. I was actually a new guy to him, which can tell you his age because you've seen me around. But I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about you just basically the mindset of Life on the X. Can you tell us what that is? Can you start off with what the X is, what Life on the X is, and how you got there?
Yeah, sure. So the title Life on the X, draws its inspiration from, our time in the military. We use this term, the X, a lot in the military, and I think, law enforcement folks also probably, many of them would be familiar with it. But it's essentially the doctrinal term of when you land at the target objective, right? So you fast rope out of a helicopter onto the rooftop of a target building, or you pull up to the front door in a vehicle, you're like, hey, that's the X right there. I land on the X, as opposed to kind of, the Y or offset foot patrol where you would walk in. But it has dual meanings. Like, we also use it, if we're moving down the street, in a vehicle or on foot, the enemy ambushes us on that street corner. And so that's the X as well. In that case, the expression is, hey, we got to get off that X. We got to get out of that kill zone and regroup and reapproach or whatever we're going to do, or at least, get out of that fatal funnel, as we call it. But I use it in business to describe what is essentially that hot seat moment, that critical moment, whether you're doing a pitch, you're doing an engagement in a sales capacity, or it's an important leadership moment on a project, whatever it is, it's a moment that you can look ahead in advance and identify, hey, this is a moment of going to be critical importance. And it can be importance great or small. It could be, after a really stressful, crappy day, you pull up into your driveway and you're carrying some of that stress with you, and you got to walk through the front door of your house, and now you got a couple of screaming kids running around. You got a stressed out spouse or partner. Like, you've got to be on that X. You've got to show up, and you've got to be able to be poised. You got to be focused. And you got to be flexible. You got to be adaptable. So it's about identifying those moments in advance and saying, okay, aligning resources, skill development, preparation. What is it going to take for me to be my best self in that moment and ultimately meet with my objective?
That's interesting too, because in my experience, the X marks the spot. This is the pivotal place. This is the most dangerous place.
Yeah.
In combat. But it's fluid, like you're saying. Like, the X could be pre-planned, building 1-1. Yep. That's the X. But say you're driving and all of a sudden you take contact. Now, guess what? New X. But so how do you do that with? I'm assuming, because I do public speaking too, and I talk to different industries and whatnot, and it's not like I'm not just going to tell you a combat story, but people at first are kind of taken aback that what we did on the X is very similar to what you did on the X. Like, I've been more stressed out at home than I have in combat. Does that sound like it?
Absolutely. Well, because I think because if you're not as deliberate with that, if you said, if you really placed a high level of importance on, hey, again, when I walk through the threshold of my home, I've got to do this, because it'll lead to this. And if not, it could lead to, negative consequences. Then you'd probably be a lot better at dealing with that level of stress. But what happens in many cases is, we put so much energy into how we make a living, and unfortunately, often our family, our personal lives, it comes at a cost, right? Because by the time we get back, we want to let our guard down. And that's, what I've learned the hard way is you've got to re-engage. You've got to put some attention into that ex, or your ability to be an effective parent or spouse is going to be really damaged. But you brought up that point. It's you go in there. I tell now the reason I like the X is because it's one of the reasons that I wanted to become a professional speaker in the first place. Is because literally, like in theater, from what I understand, not that I've done that, there's X that marks the spot where you're supposed to hit your mark, hit that X. And so that metaphor clicked to me when I was thinking about what I was going to write about. It's the same thing. When I go out there, it's like a combat operation. Obviously, the consequences aren't severe, but I walk out there on stage, and what if my slides aren't working, right? That it's only a matter of when your slides aren't going to work, the audio's not going to work, and how are you going to respond versus just melt down and react? And so that was a key tie-in. But you use the stories, the dramatic stories, to entertain people, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. My job as a speaker, your job as a speaker, is to entertain, so you get people to listen. But I work really, really hard, as I know you do, to create that red thread between the dramatic military story and how you, as the audience member, can see yourself in that situation. Because I think what you alluded to is that oftentimes, when we're feeling a level of stress, whether it's a combat or whether it's I really, really don't want to look stupid in front of my peers, your brain is not discerning the difference between that actual danger, right? And those other critical moments where you just stress is on, but you got to perform, right?
Yeah. That's, it's almost one of those things too, where like I've done a bunch of speeches too, but when I get out there, if everything's gone right so far, that's the problem. Like, what's going to hit me now? Like, I think that's the whole reason you don't want to memorize anything. This is with speaking, but I think also with preparing for combat or whatever. I think one of our biggest things, at least in my case, is we would overthink everything. Not that you don't want to be prepared for contingencies, but you also, one of my favorite sayings is you don't want to talk yourself into an ass whipping either. And when the shit starts flying, a lot of stuff, I think, I'm talking gunfights now, kind of goes out the window and what you've been trained to do. I actually was listening to some of your speeches. I think you said something like that.
Yeah, I think I'll look at training for combat similar to as my philosophy for memorize, like for speech content. I went to a great place called Heroic Public Speaking in New Jersey, and we had a script that we wrote out. So I basically memorized an entire keynote speech, but I memorized it not because I was going to deliver that, but because it got me the pacing, it got me to make sure, it got me to understand when I transition from this topic to the next one, it's going to take me about this much time. So if I need to compress my speech on the fly, I can do that. But I know the content so well, I've memorized it, and from there, I then put that aside and move through the content and start adjusting and start tweaking. So I'm not giving a memorized speech, but that was the initial process, kind of like 2-man, 4-man room entries, right? Basic immediate action drills in land warfare. You're doing them textbook. This like very, very basic, 100% perfect, 100% clean. So then you can put that aside and not have to think about it. So then your focus is on, okay, well now not only I don't have to think about that stuff, it's in my back pocket, right? I can grab it whenever I need it. It's reflexive. But now because I have the freedom to not think about that, I can read my environment better. And now when you tell me that I need to change tactics because of something that's developing, or I need to adjust and use a different tactic, my focus can be there. I can rely, I'm leaving from that highway of complete competence in the fundamentals. And so I think that's what it gives you, is you have to have a level where you're doing the very, very basics clean and perfect to give you that kind of open up that aperture to lighten that mental, that cognitive load enough to see what's out there and be able to be adaptable in the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, it's getting the basics down, the memorization, because you have that. That was clicking some things too, like with close quarters battle with CQB. It's like, okay, we got a huge complex problem, but if shit goes sideways, I'll just remember my outside foot comes in first, clear the corner.
Yeah,
guy in front of me went right, I went left, something like that. And then you can always go back to the basics. That's a good point too. I'm not saying definitely know your content for sure. But don't get too complex with it. What was given your first speech? How many years? 27 in the Navy.
Yeah,
and then Master Chief, and then which is the highest ranking enlisted men. Thank you very much.
Yep.
What going from that leadership level into your first. Because I'm trying to make a comparison between combat and like public speaking, because a lot of people are terrified of speaking. What was the feeling like the first time getting on stage?
Well, it's funny, and we should talk about this. I still get nervous before a big speech, and I like that. That's important. I welcome that feeling, but to a point, right? It's all about finding, and I call it energy management. Walking into a situation, whether it's a leader, whether it's a performer, as a speaker, carrying the right level of energy, right? You want the energy to be elevated enough that sharpens your focus, that clues you in that, hey, I better dial this in, this is important, but not so much to where now we're stumbling, we're locking up, we're freezing, and we can't do our job. But I do remember I was taking I think I was, getting out of the Navy. I got prescribed some ADD medicine, and I'm giving my first speech. And that's the thing many people don't realize, right? In the military, if you're an enlisted guy, and that's why a lot of times enlisted guys are, I hate to say it, but they're a lot better speakers than the officers because we spend so much time instructing, right? Especially as a special operations soldier, right? You spend so much time instructing other military folks, foreign military folks, government people. But I'm going down a tangent. But yeah, so it's my first speech. I had taken ADD medicine, which you can tell by the conversation how badly I need it. But I don't take anything now. But the reason I bring that up is because it made my mouth so dry.
Oh, no, really?
I'm going out there to give this speech, and I was like Mr. Ed with the peanut butter in his mouth. And I'm trying to, and not only am I nervous because it's my first speech, and it's not high stakes, right, by any stretch of the imagination.
But you're still in front of people.
Yeah, I'm in front of a group of people at this club, right, and I'm just having the hardest time trying to drink water, and it was a mess, and it was so bad. I mean, it wasn't the worst speech ever given. I'll promise you that. But I used to have this thing called the model. I used to have the last part of the model was assess. And so I'm sitting there, and some people were coming up, and they're being very complimentary. Oh, great job! And the one guy comes up, and he's an older guy, and he comes over, and I'm like, give me some solid feedback, and he's like, yeah, maybe you should change that last slide to instead of asses to assess.
I was just thinking that because I'm thinking asses.
Yeah. Easy mistake, right? And I was like, well, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up.
He was honest.
And not in the moment during Q&A. It would have been funny if you did, but I'm kind of glad you didn't. But
are there any questions? Yeah, I got just one.
Asses?
Asses, huh?
Yeah.
That's funny. No, that is a good transition though too, because in my experience, when you get up to speak, they think you're just the big tough guy, break glass, a case of war. Yeah. But when I start to explain to them the basics, like you were saying, morale is a big one. Are your troops happy?
Yeah.
And not are you kissing their ass, but do they hate coming in or do they enjoy parts of it or something like that? And what I tell people is nobody wants to work for a dick.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much it. We got to go to the beginning though.
Yeah.
We got to start off in Pennsylvania. And you didn't join to be a SEAL though, did you?
I joined to be a SEAL, but I had a little diversion.
Can you tell us why'd you join first of all?
As a kid, I always wanted to be some sort of commando. It seems like most team guys you talk to, most of them, not all, but most of them, I would say, wanted to be, especially, after, Charlie Sheen's movie came out, the masterpiece, right?
The greatest movie ever made.
Yeah. But I already...
Most accurate, anyway.
So I wanted to be a Green Beret, because my heroes were the Green Beret, the MACV-SAW guys that were doing, the hairiest shit in Vietnam, denied areas in Cambodia and Laos and North Vietnam, and those guys were just, those, again, heroes to me. At the time, though, I was under the impression that you had to, be in the regular Army and then screen for SF selection, which I think at the time you actually had the baby program, where just like going to Buds, you could come right off the street. But at some point, I had an uncle who was a retired naval aviator and airline pilot, and he kind of was nudging me towards the Navy for, his own reasons. But he bought me a book about SEALs in Vietnam, and I started reading about that. And to me, I took away from all of this that Buds training was the most difficult selection process in the military. And I was like, if I can do that, then I really have proved something to myself.
Right.
And I get to do what I thought was cool, being a commando, but being in the Navy at the same time.
Do you remember which book?
It was called, I think it was like a historical fiction book. It was called like Covert Action or something. I
remember when I found out what a SEAL was after I enlisted. The Men with Green Faces, and then Point Man, Walking Point, Patches Watson.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet him?
I did at sniper school, right?
Dude,
that guy.
Talk about an eye opener.
Yeah.
We're jumping around here, but Patches Watson. If you guys haven't read his books, legend, absolute legend. But I remember because I went to sniper school before my first deployment. And he walked in a room like a legend. I'm thinking, oh, we're going to hear some horrible, terrible Vietnam stories and how horrible it was and bad and whatever. And first thing he said was, people say Vietnam was a bad war. It was a fun war.
Yeah.
We get to hunt people every night. It's like, this guy's fucking crazy. It was 9 a.m. He's already cracked his third beer.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was him. Was it him or he was the one that threw the graduation parties at sniper school, right?
Yeah.
Up there in
Atterbury.
Camp Atterbury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but did your recruiter tell you that you could try out and then volunteer? Or did you
yeah. So I joined to be a SEAL, but I always make this joke. I don't know if I was dumber for believing the recruiter when he told me that I could pass, that I could get BUD/S orders with an ASVAB waiver, because I was also dumber for being bad at math. Yeah, so I missed ASVAB by like a handful of points. So I get to boot camp and they're like, yeah, you don't qualify for SEAL training. So I ended up doing 2 years. Went to HTA school.
I remember that.
And then went up to, because back then, before we became our own rate, we had we had to have regular Navy jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know what the purpose was, but in order for us to get advanced, we'd have to take tests, based on our Navy job, which has nothing at all to do with the SEAL job. Nevertheless, I ended up.
Can you explain what an HT is?
A whole maintenance technician is like a Navy plumber. Right, so
you gave me goosebumps in the wrong way on that one.
Yeah, I mean, just the most. Think about the most god awful plumbing experiences that you could have on a ship, and thankfully, I didn't experience any of those. But you learn welding, and so luckily for me, I was able to select. I still had dreams of going to BUD/S, so there was all these people, all the people that were better at all that shit than me, had the higher picks, and they're all going to like pre-coms or going to Japan. And I'm like, I looked at the billet, and really nobody else wanted. It was it was shore duty working on submarines in Groton, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. So I picked that one, because I knew, hey, I'd be at a shore facility. I could train, I could swim, I could run. So I did that, and when I was up there, I actually fell in with a mentor. He was a former SEAL who had basically left to move up to Connecticut so he could be closer to his family, but he was a photographer's mate, so he was the command photographer. But he would run us through the SEAL wannabe guys through workouts every day. And again, I think that 2-year delay in getting in much better shape and being much more mentally mature, I think it really was to my benefit, right? And I retook the ASVAB and then went out to BUD/S 2 years later.
Oh, cool. So you didn't go to the. I thought you did. I didn't know you did a deployment or not as an HT.
No,
because I was thinking you got the plumber thing in my head, and I've done deployments on ships, and with just dudes. Sailors and Marines, I can imagine the plumbing situation. You want like the platform shower shoes.
Yeah, so I basically all I did was I would call it's like a form of welding, brazing. I would braze these piping systems on these submarines.
That's a good call. So, that's like when all falls to shit, we always need plumbers.
Yeah, so I did welding on submarines, and then I think one deployment, and I actually did my HT skills, and we had to make a ladder to go on these shores.
I remember that.
Remember that? Those little.
That was later on though, because you went to BUD/S class 203.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead. Yeah,
No, it's fine. Jump around.
Yeah, 203 graduated SEAL training, and I think somebody else on a different podcast mentioned. I don't know if it was you who was talking about. I show up at BUD/S, like I don't even know where the hell I'm going. I get off the airplane. I'm in my whites. I go over, and they actually the taxi drops me off at Naval Special Warfare Group 1, which is actually across the street from where BUD/S is. Mm-hmm. So I have no idea. I finally find my way to the quarterdeck, and they put me over in X Division, For like the
Off the
first
bat?
Yeah, they put me in X Division, which X Division is where you go when you quit buds or you get dropped. And so you basically are like, you're back in your dungarees that we had at the time, and you're just doing stand and watch and just being a janitor at SEAL training.
So this is a place where people have quit, so morale is not high.
No, and so you're getting all the the really solid advice, right?
You're learning why the instructors hated you.
Yes, and there's no chance.
Yeah. I had to stay there the first night. I was with a buddy I went through boot camp with, and we stayed the first night in X Division. One more night, I probably would say, this just isn't for me.
I was there a whole weekend.
Oh
yeah, thankfully, I got out of there.
So someone sent you to X Division from Group 1,
or no, from Buds. I found my way over to the center, and they're like, "We don't have lodging for you." Or whatever.
Yeah.
They're just like, go there. And I'm
so
like,
you had
all right.
You had a Frogger across the Strand twice.
Yeah. With all my shit.
You didn't have an idea what was going on then, or you go to the quarterdeck. Phil Bucklew, I believe it's called.
Phil Bucklew Center for Naval Special Warfare.
And then they sent you across to X Div. I think that's how I got there too.
Yeah.
Boy, that was bad though. So you had a whole weekend at X Division?
Yeah, and I think I eventually figured it out. Got classed up, and I think it went through so many iterations, right? But the thing you do before you do first phase, it's like PTRR or pre-buds, whatever it is. It was probably like probably 3 weeks. I was there 3 weeks before we classed up, I think.
When we went through, it stood for Physical Training, Rest, and Relaxation, PTRR, which it was not.
Did you get rolled at all?
No.
Yeah, see, me either. But I'll tell you what, like when you're in buds and and it's just like hellacious, long, miserable days, and you see these guys that have gotten rolled, and you're just coming back from your morning PT, getting changed, and then getting ready to start your day, and these guys are just rolling out of bed, like sitting in the sunshine, and they're like just casual clothes, getting ready to go over to the pool to do some. And so you're like, God, I wish I was one of them right now. But then, of course, 6 months later, you're graduating and you see those guys
They're
in the
still
classes
over there,
behind you. You're like,
Well, that's the whole pay me now or pay me later.
Exactly.
Get used to the cush life now. That's fine.
Yeah.
One day still going to be there. We'll be here when you get here.
Yeah.
PTR. It bothered me because you're in Groundhog Day. You're not really advancing. You might be learning some skills.
Yeah.
You're getting shin splints. You're still running in the sand. You might wake up a little later, but you still get beat up a little bit. Were the instructors cool in PTR or cooler, or did it matter?
Well, you know how you're supposed to, like, you have this big ceremony in first phase.
Every morning's a ceremony at Bus.
Fair enough. But you get ready to start Monday morning at first phase, and you're supposed to shave your head that weekend. Well, I think we were like 2 weeks into PTR, and Nightmare, he's like, you're going to shave me. I mean, he was hardcore. He was like a good dude, though, but like, definitely really hardcore. He basically had the kind of the presence of a professional wrestler. This kind of like his gruff exterior and always yell. Yeah. So he was a tough man. So they were. I mean, I felt like they turned the heat up on us in pre-buds. I mean, we had plenty of quitters there too. Introduced us to surf torture and all that kind of stuff, and had people quit. And I felt like we definitely. It wasn't. You start off, I think first phase is Monday morning with the room inspection.
Those are fun.
Right, and that's just the...
No, I think we started with the 4 a.m. PT shower up room inspection.
That is probably accurate.
Because I remember...
Yeah, no, you're right. It had to have been that.
Because we were doing PT in my class, 208, which is a little after yours, so obviously... So I can technically say the last hard class, because yours was harder, but before me.
Yeah.
I heard your class that actually three instructors quit during Hell Week. That's the newest one. You're welcome. No, because so PTR, they're still beating you, and I think the instructors are just kind of warming up too, because they're in that limbo phase. But I remember the grinder PT one day, no shit, you're starting just chaos.
Yeah,
it's almost like Hell Week breakout.
Yeah, no, I think from what I can remember, that sounds. Yeah, I mean that sounds absolutely like it probably was the case. I guess people always ask what was the hardest part of buds, and they assume that I'd say like Hell Week, right?
No.
Which if you look at statistically, that's where we lose the most amount of people. But to me, it was like the first 4 or 5 days. Like I felt like we had about 190 people going into first phase, which I think I was told at the time that was a fairly large class.
It's a big class.
And I just felt like that first week was just nothing but just trying to get rid of the low-hanging fruit.
Totally.
Right? And it's just, and I thought the first week, because you weren't. I think with Hell Week, you're able to psychologically prepare yourself for it, the onslaught. Whereas I think so many people looked at that first week, and I tell this story. I get back, I think it's Thursday, the first week of training, and I get back, and it's 618, or the one that's.
There was 602, 618. 602 was the one in the compound.
Yeah, the one in the compound. We're in there because that's where you move once you class up. And I get back from the edge. I don't know why I was late getting back to my room. And all my roommates were all putting their shit in bags. And I was like, I just assumed that we were moving. I'm like, where are we going, fellas? They're like, well, this isn't for us. We're gone. And I'm like,
Get real?
Yeah.
That's the first day?
That's
the first week.
First week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So we lost so many guys in that first week.
What,
right. And I think they were like the old, I'll give Navy SEAL training the old college try. Like they weren't really, they weren't committed, basically.
This is me. I don't think the old college try is going to work in a place like Bud's.
No.
I think that you have to want it more than anything you've ever wanted anything ever.
Well, that's exactly it. People ask me what the ingredient is. I'm like, the most supreme level of commitment. Now, competency in the water and athleticism and physical fitness is obviously a key prerequisite. However, it comes down to the commitment.
Yeah. I saw guys quit, and these are the vast majority of quitters. I don't believe, because they come up with an excuse. They want to. The instructor didn't like me. I beat up an instructor. All this bullshit. The people I believed because I was young. I was 19.
Yeah.
The people I believed when they quit were the married guys that lived off base, because they're like, and they were good guys.
Yeah.
They're like, I just can't. I can't finish this. Go home, see the wife and kids, deal with family shit. You need to be. It needs to be commitment. I think. I mean, married guys make it through, but did you see that at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I never really thought about that. I guess what always was a mystery to me were the guys that seemed to be doing really well. Like I had one friend of mine in first phase, and he was good at everything, and he was always like, and I always, I wasn't great at very much at Bud's, but I was good enough, but I always had, like, I never honestly came to the point where I thought I was going to quit. But there was plenty of times where I'm like, I don't know if I'm the type of person they're looking for. I don't know if I can do this. Like,
wow.
It's a confidence issue, right? And I'm like, well, I'll keep doing it till they tell me I can't show up to work anymore.
That's good enough.
Right? And so I had confidence issues, and this guy was like always like, no, you got this. He was like my own cheerleader, and it was like an awesome dude. He was like a diver and all that. Well, again, it was a good friend of mine in Bud's, and one day he's just like not there anymore in Hell Week, right? Because you don't see everybody. Everybody's in their boat cruise. And I'm like, hey, where's this guy? And they're like, I quit. And it was one of those, it was like, I don't even know if it may have been Wednesday morning or Thursday morning. Hell Week usually goes Sunday night to Friday afternoon. But usually after a certain day, you're on autopilot. So you're just like, you're not going to quit. You're just going to you're not putting it, there's not a lot of output, but you're just going along, right? Because, you're just like, fuck it at this point. But anyway, it's one of those where, you don't get a lot of sleep, but there's a couple times when you get breaks of sleep. And the one is, it was like Wednesday, like early morning, they put you in dry clothes. You're in the tent right by the beach. And then you're all like feeling good. You get up and they're like, hit the surf, right?
God,
And that it's cold, it's dark. And I think he walked right to the edge of that water and he's like, nope.
That's it. That's it.
It just didn't want to do it anymore,
Oh, yeah, that was okay. So Hell Week, I've talked about on this podcast. Can you explain? Because I do want to go back to one day, but since we're on Hell Week right now, can you explain what Hell Week is?
Yeah, Hell Week, I think is, if you look back historically, and one thing in Hell Week is, I want to say, I think in terms of the overall curriculum, it probably is the cornerstone of Navy SEAL selection. Meaning, when they first, maybe Draper Kaufman, I think the first kind of the godfather of the modern Navy SEAL, when he was creating, I think it was brought back in maybe Fort Pierce, and I could have some of the details.
Oh, we'll find out on Reddit. Trust me.
Yeah, I could have some of the details.
Someone's going to correct it. We've been corrected so many times up until now already. It doesn't even matter.
I don't know. I'll go to Ben Milligan because he
does know everything.
Yeah, he knows all that stuff.
Okay, we're jumping around too. You know that Ben Milligan, just a great guy, one of the funniest guys.
Yeah.
He used to. Did he ever tell you what he referred to himself as?
No.
The Smitdod.
No.
Stood for the smartest man in the Department of Defense. Smitdod. What, morning, Smitdod?
Yeah, no, he is. Yeah, that dude. We could tell stories about that guy. Give it to Breacher School with him. But anyway, I think it's really, they try to keep that piece of the training as much the same as it was in the early 1940s when they created the program, or the late 1930s. Scouts and Raiders, NCDUs, UDTs, all of our original forefathers. And it basically was designed to replicate the stress, the fatigue of what actual combat would be like. And so that's no sleep, constant physical attention, immersion into cold water to really add the maximum level of stress the human body could take, to see who has the perseverance to keep driving on past those, preconceived limits that we might put on ourselves, right? And then you realize the power of the mind. Your body says, I can't go any further, I can't do any more, but your mind pushes you past those limits. And that's the type of person that you want revealed during that piece of training. So it's really very little sleep, constant, again, cold water all the time. You're cold, wet, tired the whole week. But it essentially tests two things, in my opinion. One, it tests your commitment, right? We talked about that. It is that one way. It's like only the committed are going to make it through Hell Week. And again, it's that perseverance, the mental fortitude to push past those limits, that pain, that exhaustion. But two, it identifies who's going to collaborate when things get really hard. When you're cold, wet, tired, exhausted, in pain, like, are you still the type of person that's going to put the needs of their teammate, of their team, their boat crew, of the mission above their own personal suffering and, self-interest? And if you're that type of person, then you make it through Hell Week and you start to earn the reputation that will follow you your rest of the time in the teams.
I remember hearing before I got to BUD/S that it's mostly mental, even though it's really physical. And is you think, because I agree too. I think when a guy has not decided to quit but he's entertaining it, I don't think there's any getting him back. Did you see that, or do you think that, or do you agree or disagree?
No, I definitely, I think I would agree with that 100%. I don't know, I'm sure there's people that would tell you that they quit and then got talked back into training, but I think you're right.
I don't think you're coming back.
And I think you have that thing where you're in your class, and it's the advice that I would probably give to people that were going through SEAL training is you're like, oh, don't let anybody quit. Don't let anybody quit, right? And I'm not proud of this, but you remember that I used the example of, what was that, the Highlander?
Yes.
Remember whenever the Highlander, he chops off the head of another immortal and he gets more powerful? And I'd be sitting there and you'd be doing surf torture and they pull you out, because surf torture is basically you link hands, walk into the surf, sit down, cold water, up your nose, down your throat, all that kind of stuff. It's cold. You get out and you're jackhammering. And it was like every time somebody was like stepped out of line and quit, it made me feel stronger.
Yes, good.
You know?
No,
and
I
was
know.
like, they're like, they don't have this? I'm still here.
Yeah.
And
No, it works that way.
Yeah.
I agree. No, that's good too. And I mean, if someone's got their mindset to quit, I think they're going to quit. Now, in my experience, the only way people make it back is they quit, then they go to the fleet for a year or two. And I think that's a reconciliation of, okay, I really want this now. Because in my class, a lot of dudes that quit were young guys.
Yeah.
The E5s, they were not so keen to going back to the fleet, and they kind of realized, it's the whole join the Navy and see the world from 12 miles away type shit.
Yeah,
because the fleet's a hard job.
It is. It depending on what job you have, and typically when you go, in a lot of cases, you quit BUD/S, you're going to go chip paint on the deck of a ship somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's tough work. An undesignated seaman, you might say.
Oh God, yeah. Well, because when we were mentioning the rate. A rate in the Navy is your job in the Navy, like your MOS in the Army. But a lot of guys because you hear that you want to get BUD/S in your contract, get SEAL training in your contract. So they had a program where you could. However, you don't have a rate or an MOS. So you quit. You don't have a skill. You do now. You're going to chip. You're going to paint and then paint over the paint.
Well, no, and you're right. And I think there is merit to understanding how the military works, right? And I think there's a detriment that I think we suffer sometimes in the SEAL teams. And I remember I heard an Army guy talk about this, is like, when they had the same thing, they call it the SF Baby program.
Sorry, Army guys talking about SEAls? Weird.
Oh, they're talking about themselves.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? We can get into that too. But they would have their own SF Baby program where it used to be, like I said, you have to have some experience, be like at least... I've been around the Army for a few years and then screened for Special Forces selection.
That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah, it is, right? And so you have a fundamental understanding of how the military works, how the Army works, right? And the same thing with the Navy, although the regular fleet is so much different. But I still think you were still getting that level of maturity. And I think you probably at 19 had to be one of the youngest guys to go in, right? Because in my class, I was 21 when I was going through the middle of buds, and I was like the third youngest guy.
We had a dude, I'm going to mention his name because he doesn't give a fuck. Did you know Nick Hawks?
No.
He was 17, right? And I just got there, and I think that he was. I think he retired, like a great dude, solid fucking dude, and a stud athlete at that age. I think we all were like the class just got there, and this kid said, "Now I know, Mike, most of you fuckers are going to quit, so just do it now." It's like, whoa, who's this asshole? Is he too young to be here? I wouldn't recommend doing.
That's usually the type of guy that doesn't make it.
Well,
right?
yeah, the loudmouth. Yeah, that was kind of fun. I don't know why I just mentioned it, but yeah, young guys going through. I think I was just too dumb to know any better because I didn't know if the fleet was bad or not. But I just knew that I didn't want to quit because people told me I would or something like that.
Yeah, I knew enough to know. And I had it good. My shore duty was good. I could not complain. And I was enough of a taste to me. When you'd be at Bud's and they'd be pointing to the ships off the coast and be like, that's for some of you. We'll be on that ship in a few weeks' time. And I'd be like, not this guy. Not until you tell me I can't be here anymore.
Yeah, that's okay. So I also, being so young, didn't realize it's structured. And I didn't realize the instructors are people, or SEALs.
Yeah.
I thought they were, they're intimidating as shit.
Yep.
So the first room inspection, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was hilarious. Obviously, we got it handed to us.
Yeah, nobody passes.
No. Well, why are you wasting your time on the weekend stripping and waxing the deck? And just go enjoy the movies or go get some drinks. You're going to get hammered on Monday. What was your first room inspection? I get asked about. I mentioned my room inspection. Anything?
I don't remember. I just remember. I think I just remember. And we had a guy named I forget what his name. Senior Chief Goward, right? That was one of our.
I remember him.
Yeah, he was, and we had a good friend of mine, Tom Marr, used to do an impression of him of basically because he talked like Lando Calrissian.
He did. I met Tom at SEAL Team too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he did do that impersonation, didn't he?
Anyway, but I don't remember the details because there's so many room inspections. But it always was that fine line between it's Sunday and it's just so it's like you're enjoying Saturday. Saturday's great. Sunday comes around and you're just like, you got to paint your helmet because they're always going to toss it across and it's going to chip. So it's got to be your uniform has to be perfect. Your shoes have to be perfect. Despite how much you sweep your room, the sand just keeps coming in. And then you're kind of like, how much time do I want to spend on this, right? You got to sharpen your knife. You got to clean your UDT vest. All that stuff has to be tip top. Mm-hmm. We had one guy, he rolled into our class. And he was kind of a pig pen, and he just said, fuck it, right? He didn't really, he's like, I'm not wasting my time with this. So they would make him pack up his entire room in a sea bag and take it down to the surf zone and dump it in the water.
Everything he's got.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then come back and get hammered.
Oh,
I'm like,
funny.
I guess that was.
There's a fine line. That ain't it.
That's that ain't it. No, it's somewhere in the middle.
Well, I remember we failed because we had dust on our ceiling. Just dude came in with sand, chucked one of the 14 instructors, failed in 30 seconds. But then we passed because we started to bait them. On the horizontal surface, it'd be a Snickers bar or something like that. That's also a fine line, too, because they can kick you out for that shit.
Well, do you remember how many fines you paid with Copenhagen?
Yes.
That always kind of annoyed me. It's always like, your class, some instructor he's not even your instructor. It's like, oh, class 203, you owe me 5,000 8-count bodybuilders. Or he likes Copenhagen. Here's the log. And you're like, and of course, individually, it comes out of your class fund, but it is. Yeah.
Speaking of class funds, and nowadays we're finding stuff with government efficiency. Do you think AB Brights was an inside job? Was there insider trading going on there? AB Brights was a place where we would get our, we would take all of our uniforms down to get dry cleaned. Remember that shit in Apparel Beach?
Yeah.
But they always recommended AB Brights. Well, always. I think the instructors were either getting a little on the side or getting a little on the side.
Yeah, but also the hardware store in on Orange Avenue, right? Because you got to buy all your knife sharpening kits and all your all your stuff to take care of your gear there, or at least that's the most convenient. It's not like a lot of us had cars. Man, but yeah, it's always a racket. You're basically going through Buds was expensive. Yeah. I was at E3 at the time, or maybe I was in E4, but even still had no money. Yeah, and so you're spending all this money to go, and you all pile in a car. You go down and you drop off they were greens at the time before they shifted over to camis, and you'd have to take them, and they would get these things heavy starched, and you'd have a cover heavy starched. right? And then, your boots, you do that yourself. But it's like, I mean, you're spending all this money every week to get that done.
You got to figure
what's the point? What am I proving by having the diligence to make sure I drop my shit off at the cleaners?
Well, because they would say that AB Brights does it the correct way. But I also get 30% of profits. Because you got to figure, you get 200 plus dudes every new class, and they're getting their shit every week dry cleaned.
Makes you wonder, or at least they get their services for free or
something.
Some kind of kickback.
A lot of Copenhagen going on there, something like that. But the room specs for Fun Hell Week we sort of covered. You know what? You did a good job of explaining that because I was listening to one of your speeches online, and I don't think people realize that after Hell Week, SEAL training's not over. And you got to finish that. Well, Hydra Recon, I don't even want to go into. That was miserable. But then you get into dive phase.
Yeah.
Learning how to dive, open and closed circuit. But then there's a thing called pool comp. And you explained that really well. Can you walk us through pool comp?
Yeah, so you're testing in a couple of different ways, right? And so the things, and I should just preface this with saying the skills that you learn at SEAL training, you're exposed to the mediums and the environments and situations and equipment that you're going to use when you're in a SEAL platoon. So you're exposed to diving, you're exposed to reconnaissance, you're exposed to explosives and weapons handling and marksmanship, but they're at such a rudimentary level. And more than actually trying to build a competence in those areas, they're trying to ensure that you can operate safely and effectively in those areas. And so whereas Hell Week tests your mental fortitude, your ability and willingness to collaborate with others in a high-stress environment, pool comp itself tests your performance under pressure, right? And so pool comp is essentially, it's the culmination of a 5-day pool week where, the weeks prior you learn, all incidentally, the closest I came to being kicked out of SEAL training was failing the dive physics tests for the first time. So suck at math.
Hey, people don't realize there's that too, dive medicine, dive physics, the math involved.
Yep. So after that, then you start pool comp. And pool comp, you start the pool week. So pool week, you splash into a 9-foot swimming pool and in the combat training tank, they call it, and you're introduced to the very basics of scuba diving procedures. Open circuit, meaning there's bubbles. Normal scuba gear only. It's old school. It's got inhalation and exhalation hose like the old Jacques Cousteau back in the 60s. So you can tie them in knots and stuff. And you do emergency procedures. So long and short, by the time you get to Friday, you're tested on this. And essentially what it is you're swimming along the bottom of a pool. Instructor comes down, rips your mask off, rips your fins off, and starts to give you challenges to your air source, right? Ties those things.
That's a very nice way to say that. Challenges to your air source.
Yeah, it's a charitable way of saying they basically starve you for air. They take the mouthpiece, they'll tie the knots. The knots or the challenges, usually they'll start off, they'll turn off maybe your air source, then they'll wrap the hoses around your tanks, and then they'll tie it. It culminates in this thing called the whammy knot. And so you've got to calmly problem solve. So not only do you have to go and hold your breath, you have to make sure that you're ditching your gear in exactly the right sequence and order, which means you have to have the presence of mind to be able to do that. You take it off, and then while you're trying to do this, you have to make sure that you're solving the right problem. It sounds easy at first, but as the sequence moves through, I think the whole thing takes probably 10, 15 minutes. Each time you do it, you're getting more and more starved for air because you solve a problem, you get your stuff back on, you get a couple puffs of air, they pull it out of your mouth, and the whole thing starts over again. So each subsequent time, you get more and more starved for air. And I think by the time that I got to my whammy knot, I was basically near drowning. I could see like a tunnel kind of closing in because I've been holding my breath, and it no longer became panic. I started to just have a feeling of relaxation. And I'm like, I do little bubbles. I'm putting the mouthpiece up to get these little bubbles. The instructor's hitting me, and I don't pay any attention. I'm keep going. I'm trying to, and he finally just grabs me by the neck, and he pulls me up, and and I'm swimming to the side, and it was an Army SF guy who was my instructor, and I'm feeling all happy and proud of myself that I passed. And this other guy, this old salty Team 2 guy, looks at me and goes yeah, Merry fucking Christmas, you had the Army guy. As if I did. I was like, I just kind of took the wind out of my sails.
Hey, you passed, you passed.
I passed, yeah.
That's a tough one, too, because if you fail, the sequence, like you're saying, or don't, kiss the pool deck, you don't know that until you get up, and they're like, all right, anyway, Petty Officer Drum, fail.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the Army SF scuba It's the exact same thing. It's
Oh, yeah.
overseen by the Navy, and I think it's pretty much the same. Every bit as difficult, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, just getting in there too with it, because it's not as easy as, all right, big breath, here it comes. Like, I remember getting caught exhaling and then they yank it.
Yeah.
Now you don't have a full lung, and then you feel them working. So you gotta wait. You gotta like go limp. You don't want to waste your oxygen because you're gonna run out.
Yeah.
And then you don't know. It's also not. There will be knots 1 through 4, and then the 4th is your whammy. It's like your 15th knot could be the whammy. It could be the 3rd.
But it's, you know what was interesting about this, not only is it testing your performance under pressure, but you start, again, things that I talk about when I speak now, they were somewhat intuitive, right? In the things in terms of mental skills. Okay, if I want to do this, I have to mentally rehearse. And so I have to visualize myself doing these sequences.
Good.
To get the reps and sets, right? And what we know is professional athletes do this, and it leads to success, and it's the things that I coach. But we didn't have that. We had intuitively, you didn't have it, I didn't have it. It wasn't until 2006 when we were having such a high level of failure rate that they had psychologists come in and start intentionally teaching some of these mental skills.
Smart.
But we intuitively learn these things. You've been in the teams for a while. You intuitively learn mental skills, right? You're going in on a target, an objective, riding helo in. You've got your risk coach with your task organization, and you start thinking about, okay, we land on the deck or one of the other helicopters goes down, or we land on the deck and we get contact on the LZ, we get contact halfway to the objective, right? You start visualizing what your response is in those moments. And you're taught, right? Urban warfare or land warfare. If you get contacted by the enemy right here, what cover are you going to use?
Yes.
Where are you going to move?
Yes.
How are you going to use this terrain to your advantage? So, yeah.
That's the kind of stuff, even when you're on target or on the mission, you should be thinking about that as you're rolling. Obviously, you're looking for threats, but also, we get hit now. What do we got? Who am I with? You know, that's smart too.
Yeah.
You know, and what they started doing too, I want to get your opinion on this, because when we went through, there wasn't a lot of prep. It's like boot camp, but now they have the pipeline, right?
Well, they've changed it. Yeah, so what they have now, or what they had, I actually oversaw the program before. One of the things I did before, second to the last job I had before I retired, was to oversee the program. It's called the Warrior Challenge, or the Warrior Challenge program is how you get into the Navy, and that includes SEAL, EOD, SWCC, Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewman, Diver, and Air Rescue Swimmer. You come in under a contract. So you can't just show up to boot camp and say, I want to go to these special programs. You have to have it in a contract when you show up. And so it used to be you'd have what's called an 800 division. So you go into a division that's just divers and air rescue swimmers, or just SWCC and SEAL in one division. And so you go through, and what that does, it affords you the opportunity to every morning while everybody's still asleep, you get up early, you come over to the pool, and you actually start PTing and doing the workouts. And then after boot camp, you go on to BUD/S prep, which, again, this happens at Great Lakes. That's where the Navy's only boot camp is. But since then, they've dissolved the 800 division because they're having, I don't know, whatever reason, they're saying, hey, our guys are showing up to the SEAL teams, they're too cocky. And
that's what I was going to ask.
Right, and they somehow thought that this was the issue, right? No, it's, anyway.
What was the issue?
You know, guys would just, Libertyans, guys would, you know, I think it was pervasive in special operations, but I think SEAL got a lot of the focus on it. SEAL teams, you know, whatever the ethical issues that guys would have, guys with attitudes, guys with cocky, you know, attitudes showing up, not the level of humility. And somehow they thought that because you're elevating their status starting with boot camp, that somehow equates to way down the line, 2 years later, a cockier kid that shows up at the team.
Because I would think that if there's a cockiness, that's going to get squashed at BUD/S.
Yeah.
Is that true? Do you think that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I mean, you're going to be humbled. Now,
yeah.
Some people, right, are just who they are, right? They're going to quiet themselves down and be who they need to be until they don't have to be that person anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, because at the end of the day, right, I think probably every platoon that we were in, we shit-canned somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Every single one I was in, we shit-canned somebody because they just couldn't handle the pace, and I think it was all performance-related. Yeah. Somebody couldn't handle it, and I think maybe our second platoon together, maybe nobody got kicked out because that was like a kind of a condensed workup schedule. But I think other than that, every other
nobody
platoon
got booted from that one.
Yeah, every other platoon I was in, we lost somebody. We kicked somebody out for performance.
Yeah, I've even seen them experiment at BUD/S, like purposely be easier on a class during the weeks up to Hell Week and then just destroy them on Sunday night. Where there's like I remember one class I saw, Monday was a holiday. And so, but obviously Hell Week's not.
Yeah.
And Tuesday there was like a formation. The bell was ringing for a solid hour.
Oh, okay.
But just almost like they're trying to test the waters. So I'd heard from other guys that went on to become buzz instructors that they thought the pipeline. I would see it as two different ways. Like it's good because you should be preparing these people physically for what they're about to get into. Like you don't want to be the jackass running in combat boots on pavement because you're going to, or teach them the right ways to, like the whole, you don't need to take cold showers to get used to it. It's just there.
Well, I will say this. I say, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. They could dissolve the 800 division program, but then when you start prep, which is 8 weeks, they have that. They moved it out to California now. It's 8 weeks. SEAL and SWIC candidates are together. They finish prep, and then they separate and go to their respective pipelines. Mm-hmm. Now, it's fine if you want to do that, but then you've got to also say, all right, well, we have to lower the standards for prep a little bit now because guys have been in boot camp, and they're hardly working out at all.
That's true, yeah.
Right? You're not in great shape. Like, you're going to be in better shape before you go to boot camp than you are when you leave boot camp, despite our best effort to keep you in shape.
Yeah, right.
But it's true because you're not sleeping enough, you're stressed out, you're not eating quality food. And really, when I always had to try to tell the guys that were through, I'm like, your priority is not, like, your priority here is not to train for buds.
No.
Like, your priority here is to become a basically trained sailor.
Yeah, true.
That is a priority. So you're going to miss workouts. You're going to have major testable events. That is your job, okay? So demonstrate that you can do this, that you can be a good basically trained sailor. Or, you're of no use to us in the SEAL teams. Nevertheless, you're going to have to lower the standards physically to get guys to make it through training. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, whether the guy can do 100 push-ups or fails at 50, it's like all of that is a medium to stress them. It doesn't matter whether the mean drops in terms of, as long as you're testing people's ability to perform in that environment. And I think ultimately, that's what it's about.
Yeah, when I finished boot camp, I quickly realized the whole white rice and turkey gravy diet was not ideal.
Yeah.
But, I mean, delicious with some Texas feet there. The old Navy.
We had, back when we went, you couldn't even have any desserts because we had a lot of husky kids in our boot camp, right? So they weren't allowed to. There are no desserts. Yeah, all of us group punishment.
We're going to punish everybody.
Yeah.
Just back to buds though, because you graduate pool comp. I failed the first two. I had to do it again on Monday. That's a long weekend. But then you're still not done. You go into the third phase, and then I thought the hardest part of buds was the island.
Yeah, well, we actually had an extra 2 weeks on the island.
2 weeks?
Yeah, so what happened was we go through it. So third phase, you finish dive phase, and dive phase after pool comp, then you start learning basic navigation in open circuit open circuit. You basically go off, you drop off the beach, and you basically have an attack board, which is a compass and a depth gauge and a watch, and basically just you learn how to start swimming straight. And then you get exposed to the LAR 5, the closed circuit with no bubbles. And then you start doing basic ship attacks, things like that. And then you get to third phase, and that's when it's kind of land warfare. And the first part of that, after some classes, you go up to Laguna, the mountains outside of San Diego, and you spend that was a treat. Solid rain on us the whole week. That was freaking miserable in the wintertime. And you're up there, and then you're supposed to, I think, go to La Posta or something where you learn marksmanship, and then you go to the island. So we went there because we're supposed to, SecDef was supposed to visit us. So they said, hey, you're going to spend an extra 2 weeks on the island so they can go out there and see that. Well, of course, never showed up. Then we're out there, like say the island, San Clemente Island, where nobody can hear you scream.
That's it.
Yeah.
No, I remember that too because you wouldn't see, because Bud's is in Coronado and the Hotel Del's right there. It's the destination.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think dudes are getting tortured right there in front of these tourists, but they are.
Yeah.
But then you go to San Clemente Island.
Yeah.
And nobody can hear you scream. I'm convinced.
That's the coldest I was. To your point, the coldest I was up to that point was I actually got hypothermia when I was doing obstacle loading winter on the island. Yeah.
Beautiful water.
Yeah. Lots
really
of sharks.
Nice. A lot of great whites out there.
Yeah, a lot of great whites.
And what the only thing worse than a great white that you see is the one you don't.
Yeah, well, when we first showed up, I remember we were doing basically just got off the barge that takes us out there, or no, whatever it is, and I see a giant sea lion with its head gnawed off.
Oh.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
something took a bite out of that.
Yeah, and then you do the old Shark Week,
the shark appreciation swim.
Yeah,
that's a good time, and plus the phosphorescence, every kick, stroke, and glide, you can
But I remember I hated swimming so much.
Yeah.
It's like, so what happens is, and I think it's kind of the legendary thing. Now I'm ruining it for all the classes that come behind, but I don't know if it's your first week there and you're like, oh, all right, fellas, just going to give you the night off, and so you're like, oh, here's some videos on Shark Week.
That's 100% what they did.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, you're cool, you're chill, and you're like, oh, and you're watching like a couple hours of like Shark Attack videos and Shark Week, and you're like, all right, jock up in your swim gear.
Yep.
It's time for like I don't know, whatever the long the swim was. But I just was so miserable swimming. I was like, I just stopped thinking about sharks biting me in half at that point.
What I would say to I didn't like it either. I thought failing swims I didn't fail a swim, but I thought that would be the reason I get booted. Was someone's asked before, aren't you afraid of getting eaten by a shark? I'm like, I'm not that lucky. What would happen to me is I would finish a 2-mile swim, a shark would grab me, swim me 2 miles out, and let me go.
Yeah.
And I got to do that motherfucker again. Would you just eat me?
Yeah.
So, the island, and then did they, an extra 2 weeks though, did they? You just kept doing the same thing?
We just did like all the marksmanship, all the stuff that we would have done like in La Posta, we just did it out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then did they tell you which team you got out there? Or?
Yeah, so then you do your dream sheet. And and I don't know what it was, a factor of like, because it was winter on the island and everybody was cold, they would do a lot of stuff where we'd have to do a lot of over the beach, which, you would be wearing wetsuits or whatever, but not us, just to make it miserable doing over the beach.
Yeah.
But at some point, all the guys, everybody picked warm weather teams. So everybody was trying to pick SEAL Team 3 at the time, which was desert, or SEAL Team 1, which is like the Southeast Asia area, or Team 4 on the East Coast, which is like South America. And I was like, I just want to go to where, I don't know, the land of my people. So I like SEAL Team 2, Europe.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was told, because the way it worked back then was there was 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, and 8.
Yeah.
And they said pick your coast.
Yeah.
So the odd numbers are here in San Diego, the even numbers are out east. And,
so I did mine all coast.
Yeah.
I think I probably was like 2, 8, 4.
That's what I did too. And the other advice I got that turned out to be very sound advice was do not put SDV anywhere. Don't even breathe sealed delivery vehicle.
What was the old? There was an old document. I wish I still had a copy of it. What was it? Huck Barber's 59 Rules to Frogmen Perfection.
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it was like it was a nom de guerre of somebody that one of the team guys that I won't say his name because I don't know if he's out in the public, but he wrote this book and basically all the things, the little rules, and one of them was, if faced with orders to buds or SDV, choose suicide.
Choose suicide. Yeah, and I remember they would even tempt dudes with, we'll send you right to free fall. You put SDV, we'll send you to SDV, and then right to free fall. Because that was before the pipeline too. You had to earn free fall.
Yeah.
You can go to free fall in Yuma, Arizona, for 3 weeks, and then hop in the fucking tin can and get ready to freeze for 14 hours.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're going to really be keeping your jumps up while you're at SDVs.
But that was the thing. We had one dude in my class that just wanted SDV forever. I think he committed suicide. No, I'm not serious. I shouldn't joke about that.
Yeah.
But no, we went out there and realized it was one of those things where if anyone in the Navy can relate to this, like you see a buddy before he goes to mess crank on a ship for 2 weeks, and then when you see him afterward, just a 1,000-yard stare.
Well, the problem with SDVs, and not that, it's been phenomenal operators, obviously, but you would definitely see the guys that spent a career in SDVs, and then they try to come back, and this is the case in my first platoon, right? Guys would come back into the teams, and they just they weren't doing CQB, they weren't doing like the level of land warfare. Best divers in the world.
Without question.
Right? And I think,
really good snipers, too.
Yeah,
really good snipers.
For the SNR stuff. Yeah, fair enough, yeah. But I think even back then, yeah.
Well, the one thing I remember about SDV guys, when we would train them up on CQB, was they were a clean slate, though. They didn't have bad habits. So you can redo it. And there really wasn't a lot of attitude. They were just happy to have 2 feet on land.
Yeah. And were you a green team instructor then?
No, I never was an instructor. I would teach some stuff, but never was a full-on instructor. I was going to.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a buzz instructor. I wanted to make Master Chief and then be an instructor.
Yeah.
That would have taken 30 years, but that would have been worth it.
Yeah.
Plus, it would have taken me that long to grow the proper mustache to be a Master Chief.
Yeah. That's right. I never had one of those.
I think I'd like to take a break and then we can get into Team 2. You good with that?
Yeah.
Well, that's fun, isn't it? I'd like to hear what you think, too. We're going to break there just because we don't want to get too wordy, too much verbiage, too many big words, whatnot. I want to hear what you think, though, at the Operator Podcast. Make sure you go there and let me know in the comments what you think. what we should be talking about, what you liked and whatnot too. We are obviously going to continue this. It'll be a continuation of episode 133 of the Operator Podcast. Part 2 will be coming up next Wednesday, me and Master Chief Drum one more time. But a lot of fun catching up. I hope you're enjoying it right now. So if you just stick around and be patient, you'll see part 2, and you're never out of the fight.